In 1981, a family seeking escape became victims of one of America's most brutal murder mysteries, where the unthinkable occurred. A child vanished, and the truth remains buried in decades of secrets, corruption, and fear. Hints of the Unknown presents the Keddie Murders. In the shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains, where wilderness meets civilization in the rugged terrain of Plumas County, California, there once stood a resort that would become synonymous with one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The Keddie Resort, established in the 1920s, was originally built to house railroad workers before transforming into a vibrant vacation destination in the 1950s and early 1960s. It was a place where the American dream seemed tangible. Families gathered in rustic cabins, children played freely in the surrounding forests, and the worries of urban life dissolved into the crisp mountain air. But by 1980, Keddie's golden age had long since passed. The resort's decline mirrored the changing fortunes of many rural American communities in the late 1970s. The once pristine cabins, numbered 1 through 33, had deteriorated into low-rent housing, attracting a mix of long-term residents seeking affordable shelter in California's increasingly expensive housing market. The resort's transformation from vacation paradise to struggling rental community created a unique social ecosystem, where permanent residents lived alongside occasional tourists, and where the line between paradise and poverty grew increasingly thin. It was into this world that Glenna Sue Sharp arrived in November 1980, bringing with her 5 children and hopes for a fresh start. At 36, Sue was no stranger to life's hardships. She had recently left an abusive marriage in Connecticut, making her way across the country with her children, 15-year-old John, 14-year-old Sheila, 12-year-old Tina, and 5-year-old Greg. Her oldest son, Rick, had chosen to remain with his father in Southern California. The Sharp family settled into Cabin 28, one of the larger units in the resort, paying $250 monthly rent for what they hoped would be their sanctuary. The cabin itself was modest but functional, a 2-bedroom structure with a living room, kitchen, and bathroom. The interior walls were covered in wood paneling typical of the era, and large windows offered views of the surrounding forest. Sue quickly found work as a cook at a nearby restaurant in Quincy, the county seat. Her children enrolled in local schools, where they began to forge new friendships and adapt to life in their mountain community. John Sharp, in particular, seemed to thrive in Keddie. Described by teachers and friends as friendly and protective of his siblings, he quickly became popular among the local teenagers. His sister Sheila was known for her maturity and responsibility, often helping to care for her younger siblings while their mother worked. Tina, at 12, was creative and bright, earning good grades and making friends easily. Young Greg, too young for school, spent his days playing around the cabin and resort grounds. The Sharp family's neighbors in the surrounding cabins formed an integral part of their new life. Among them were Martin Smartt and his wife Marilyn, who lived nearby with Smart's friend John Boubede. Martin Smartt worked as a therapist's aide at the Feather River Hospital, while Boubede was allegedly a former Chicago police officer with a suspicious past. Marilyn Smartt and Sue Sharp developed a friendship, sharing coffee and conversations about their lives. The events that would transform this community began unfolding on Saturday, April 11th, 1981. The day started normally enough. Sue worked her shift at the restaurant, while her children enjoyed their weekend freedom. As evening approached, John invited his friend Dana Wingate, 17, to stay over. Dana was well known in the community, a tall, athletic teenager who had become one of John's closest friends since the Sharps' arrival. Another friend, Jamie Smartt, no relation to Martin, also joined them for the night. That evening, Sheila made plans to sleep over at Cabin 27, where her friend Tammy lived. It was a common arrangement in Keddie, where the children often moved between cabins, and parents maintained a loose communal supervision. The last known sighting of the Sharp family alive was around midnight, when a neighbor reported seeing lights on in Cabin 28 and hearing the sounds of normal evening activity. What transpired in the dark hours that followed would become the subject of decades of investigation, speculation, and heartache. Between 1 o'clock and 2 a.m., several neighbors later reported hearing what they described as muffled screams or thumping sounds. Justin Plard, who lived in cabin 26, would later tell investigators he heard what sounded like screaming, but assumed it was teenagers playing pranks, a common enough occurrence in Keddie that it didn't warrant calling the police. The discovery of the crime occurred at approximately 7:45 a.m. on Sunday, April 12th, when Sheila Sharp returned from her sleepover. What she found in the living room of cabin 28 was a scene of unprecedented violence. The bodies of her mother Sue, brother John, and his friend Dana Wingate lay on the living room floor. All three victims had been bound with electrical wire and medical tape, subjected to horrific violence with multiple weapons including hammers, a knife, and possibly other implements that were never recovered. The specific details of the crime scene, later documented by investigators, painted a picture of extraordinary brutality. Sue Sharp had been bound and gagged, her body showing evidence of both sharp and blunt force trauma. John and Dana had suffered similar fates, with investigators noting that the attacks seemed particularly focused on John. The killers had apparently used weapons found in and around the cabin, suggesting either opportunistic violence or an attempt to avoid carrying incriminating tools. The horror of the discovery was compounded by another shocking revelation. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing from the cabin. Investigators initially hoped she might have spent the night at a friend's house, but this hope quickly faded as they contacted neighboring cabins. Remarkably, Greg Sharp and Jamie Smartt, who had been asleep in an adjacent bedroom, were physically unharmed. They later told investigators they had heard strange sounds during the night, but had been too terrified to leave their room. The initial response to the crime was problematic from the start. The Plumas County Sheriff's Department, inexperienced with homicides of this magnitude, made several crucial errors in processing the crime scene. Evidence was improperly collected or contaminated, and the crime scene wasn't properly secured for several hours after the bodies were discovered. These early mistakes would hamper the investigation for decades to come. The investigation initially focused on several key suspects, particularly Martin Smartt and John Boubede. Both men had suspicious backgrounds. Smartt had a history of domestic violence, while Boubede's claimed history as a Chicago police officer proved to be fabricated. Both men left Keddie abruptly shortly after the murders, raising investigators' suspicions. Marilyn Smartt would later provide crucial information about her husband's behavior around the time of the murders. She reported that Martin had been increasingly agitated in the days leading up to the crimes and had expressed strong dislike for Sue Sharp. According to Marilyn, Martin had disappeared for several hours on the night of the murders, returning home in an agitated state. She also reported that a hammer had gone missing from their tool collection around the same time. The search for Tina Sharp became a separate investigation, involving multiple law enforcement agencies and hundreds of volunteers. Search parties combed the surrounding forests and mountains, while investigators followed leads across California. The breakthrough, when it came, was tragic. In 1984, a bottle collector searching in the woods near Camp 18, approximately 50 miles from Keddie in Butte County, discovered a portion of a human skull. Dental records confirmed it belonged to Tina Sharp. The location of Tina's remains raised new questions about the crimes. Camp 18 was not a random location. It was an area familiar to Martin Smartt, who had worked there previously. This connection added to investigators' suspicions, but still didn't provide enough evidence for an arrest. As the investigation continued, other potential suspects emerged. Some investigators focused on the local drug trade, noting that Keddie had become a transit point for marijuana trafficking. Others suggested connections to organized crime, pointing to Boubede's alleged Chicago connections. Yet each lead seemed to fade away without producing concrete evidence. The impact on the community was immediate and lasting. The once casual atmosphere of Keddie disappeared overnight, replaced by fear and suspicion. Parents kept their children indoors, doors were locked, and the easy trust that had characterized life in the resort evaporated. Many residents moved away, unable to live with the shadow of such violence hanging over their homes. The years following the murders brought more questions than answers. Martin Smartt and Marilyn divorced, and he moved to Oregon. Before his death in 2000, Smartt allegedly confessed to the murders in a letter to his therapist, though this confession wasn't enough to officially close the case. John Boubede had died years earlier, taking whatever knowledge he might have had to his grave. The physical reminders of the tragedy were eventually erased. In 2008, Cabin 28 was demolished, along with most of the original Keddie resort. New development now stands where families once vacationed and where the Sharp family sought their fresh start. But the case refused to be forgotten. In 2013, investigators made a potentially significant discovery when they recovered a hammer from a local pond, matching the description of one of the murder weapons. New DNA testing techniques were applied to the remaining evidence, though the results have never been made public. The case was officially reopened in 2016 when special investigators with the Plumas County Sheriff's Office uncovered new evidence, including a recording of an anonymous caller who had known details about Tina's remains before they were discovered. These developments brought renewed hope, but also highlighted the many missed opportunities of the original investigation. Documents revealed that initial investigators had failed to follow up on critical leads and witness statements. There were suggestions of cover-ups and law enforcement corruption, though nothing was ever proven. The surviving Sharp children have continued their search for answers. Sheila Sharp, in particular, has never stopped seeking justice for her family. She has written about her experiences and worked with investigators over the years, keeping the case in the public eye. The trauma of that April morning has never left her, but she has channeled her pain into a determined quest for truth. Recent years have seen increased interest in the case, spurred by true crime documentaries and podcasts. New theories have emerged, old evidence has been re-examined, and fresh eyes have looked at the case files. Some investigators believe they know who committed the murders, but lack the evidence to prove it in court. Others suggest that crucial pieces of the puzzle remain undiscovered, perhaps hidden in the memories of those who were in Keddie that night. The Keddie murders represent more than just an unsolved crime. They mark a moment when a community lost its innocence, when the dark realities of violence shattered the illusion of safety in a peaceful mountain town. The case serves as a haunting reminder that even in the most serene places, darkness can descend without warning, leaving behind questions that may never be answered. Today, the mountains still stand sentinel over the former site of Cabin 28, their ancient peaks unchanged by the passage of time. They keep their secrets about what really happened on that spring night in 1981, when a family's dream of a fresh start ended in unimaginable tragedy. The story of the Keddie murders continues to resonate, a testament to the enduring human need for justice and truth, even as the years slip away and memories fade. Perhaps somewhere in the remaining evidence, in the memories of those still living, or in the conscience of someone who knows the truth, lies the key to solving these brutal crimes. Until then, the Keddie murders remain a dark chapter in California's history, their questions echoing through the years, waiting for answers that may never come. The case stands as a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be buried by time, their truth remaining just out of reach, like shadows in the mountain mist. If you want to join me in exploring more unsolved mysteries, dark histories, and unexplained events, make sure to subscribe to Into the Unknown. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss an episode. And remember, some mysteries are meant to be solved, while others are meant to haunt us forever.